Welcome to the Cryptozoology Show. This is Lochness Monster Part 8, African Lake Monsters. Ooh, no place has more sort of, besides South America, dinosaur-like sort of creature stories and killer fish and giant monster snakes and all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the sort of continent of Africa, and certainly the motherland. All kinds of the most craziest wild tales, not only of sort of giant sort of cryptozoological creatures, but even more terrifying sort of fallen angels that are buried underneath the Euphrates that the locals are terrified to go there. They'll go past and they'll hear sometimes the apparently these angels screaming underneath in the caverns down there, sort of, and that's where it says in the Bible that they'll be released. In the end times, with all this corona stuff and everything else going on, a lot of people start predicting these kinds of things. So besides our world being polluted to death with all kinds of terrible things, as I showed you in some of the other sorts of ones, and you'll see in my upcoming documentary there about that sort of thing. You'll see that besides all these sorts of things, there's some other scary stuff down there. But I mean, this is like since ancient times, people recorded going past this sort of area of the Euphrates and hearing sort of like demons or stuff, like crazy stuff down there. So pretty creepy anyways. Some of these other monsters sound way less scary sort of thing like that. But last episodes there, we had some jokes with the modeling sort of gigs they're coming up there. Junkies trying to sort of get these calendars going and things like that. So on this episode, we're not going to really get into that sort of thing, but we'll give you an update when some of the new contestants, if any new ones send in, or once he's approaching there. We're still hoping for Brittany. Ooh, baby, baby. so yeah, you never know who might show up in it there. Maybe we could convince some other sort of famous ones. What's that mature lady there? I saw her in the Ellen DeGeneres show there once. My God, that lady's funny. I like her. She's hilarious. But she had this sort of. Was it Angelica Houston? I can't. Oh my goodness, it was what? But it was one of those sort of more mature, famous actresses there, and she had the hots for the Beebs there, so she wanted to sort of put her hands all over him and stuff like that, and all that sort of thing like that. So she's seems certainly not too shy. Maybe we can get her on board. So, but anyway, so who knows who might show up in these calendars in the future? But anyways. Kidding aside, we're going to go on about a whole bunch of diverse sort of creatures here, and some big fish that you can hunt in Africa, and killer fish that eat people, and all kinds of stuff, and giant snakes that make Titanoboa look pretty small, and all kinds of different ones that we're going to cover here. The first one I wanted to talk about is the Mahamba. Now, I've read about this one in numerous sorts of different ones. One of them, Roy Macau, there, I went to sort of search him and his book down in D.C. there way back in the day and stuff like that. And I got a copy of his book, sort of thing like that. And it was a very good book. But here's another one that he had there. Roy Macau's A Living Dinosaur there. The question mark's missing out of it. But anyways, he talks about this sort of 50-foot long crocodile called the Mahamba in Lake Lucala, and different areas around that sort of basic region there. And these things are said to at least reach 50 feet or longer, and they'll knock over canoe and eats people and stuff like that. And here's one of the sort of depictions of the size of it compared to a typical sort of African there. So that's one terrifying beast. I showed you in my dinosaur piece there one that was over 25 feet. And if you see the size of this thing, I mean, this dude could just open up his mouth and inhale like probably a couple of people with just, sort of a belch sort of thing going here. He'd be coughing the mouth then, but, just some kind of little inhale there, and he'd sort of, that be about the end of you, right? And sort of thing like that. So I can't even imagine something twice the size of that. Absolutely terrifying, but this creature, the natives are terrified of it and sort of don't want to go around, which I can't blame them. Could you imagine a 50-foot long sort of crocodile, or possibly longer? I mean, that's absolutely terrifying, right? So, I mean, all kinds of weird sort of suspects for it. Some are claiming could be anything from a mosasaurus to all kinds of stuff, right? So, a lot of people like making these guesses, and I notice a lot of cryptozoology people always try and find some dinosaur to match it or stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of these things are based loosely on things and not really, doesn't actually match the creature quite often, is what they're suggesting, because they're ignoring things about it. So it's just, that's the way people are, right? Each one has their own theories, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I look at sort of the whole sort of scope of these things, and I mean, a vast majority of these people, when they're describing it, it really is sort of like a giant crocodile, not much else here, sort of thing. But but some of the descriptions of some of the creatures, they'll suggest all kinds of odd sort of dinosaurian ones that sometimes really don't match the sort of it at all, right? Like, not even close. So, that terrifying creature, anyways, I certainly wouldn't want to be going near it. And I know the Bubangi natives there, they don't want to go near it either. Sort of, so the poor little dudes there, they're each day when you're going down to the sort of water there by the lake and stuff like that could be your last, right? So, not good. Absolutely terrifying sort of a creature, right? I still can't get over the size reported. I mean, 50 feet is gigantic, man. I mean, that's absolutely terrifying. Because, I mean, there's an old photo that was said to be just slightly over 25 feet long. So I fully believe that probably at least these things could maybe reach 30 feet, probably, sort of thing. So, give or take some exaggeration a little bit, 30 feet doesn't take long to become 40 feet, right? And this sort of thing. So, this could be a specific sort of like a type of crocodile, but an unknown one that's sort of, you know what I mean, even a little bit bigger, right? Sort of thing like that, but I mean, absolutely terrifying. Can you imagine sort of going down a thing like that? That's why there's some African beasts and fish that I'd love to chase, but geez, every time when I think of standing by these waters, it would be my luck, like I said, some, you know what I mean, one of these lake monsters or something's going to come out, because I've run across a lot of strange things over the years, including possibly a couple of times a Sasquatch-like sort of thing. And all kinds of crazy stuff. So I seem to have strange luck of running into weird anomalies out there. So it would be my luck that, you know what I mean, one of these things would come out. And I mean, certainly the idea of some 50-foot croc coming at me is not good. So, like, I mean, being a Canadian boy and stuff like that, I mean, it was petrified enough wading around in some of the waters in Florida and stuff like that, to let alone in some where they're much smaller here, and they're still terrifying, can eat a human being. I mean, there was a pond where all these kids kept missing years ago, and they found this giant sort of gator in there, right? And I mean, this guy was monstrous and sort of thing, and I mean, he was just absolutely ferocious sort of size to him, right? So I mean, some of these stories do have sort of bases on them and things like that. I mean, some of them are quite terrifying, sort of thing like that. So I certainly didn't cover remotely all this sort of cryptids in here. There was a bunch of other ones that I could have done, but a lot of them are sort of like land and sort of water monsters, where there are a little bit of both sort of going on here. So it's sort of it just seemed to be not sort of like I'll cover them in another sort of thing. But here's one that a lot of people wouldn't think of, but I mean it certainly seems to be more of a water dwelling sort of a creature here, and this one here. And this is water panther, they call them, water lion, different ones like that. It has saber tooth like in the front here, okay? Jungle walrus, water panther. One's local names are used like this, right? Absolutely fascinating sort of a creature, and they live by sort of waters, sort of lakes, streams, marshes, anything like that. Seem to have a fairly decent distribution to them in different sort of locales in certain areas of Africa. And these creatures are said to be the size of a large lion and sport long tusks like fangs in the front. Uh, Pounces on hippos to humans at water's edge. Reports in many areas, some depictions seem to have stripes to spots and may have variances in colors, just like a lot of cats do. Um, Reported in so many bodies of water: the Kwanza River, Oka River, Lubinia River, Lakoma River, Lake Benguela, swamps in Zambia, even areas of the upper waters of the Congo, Lake Tanganyika area. Also, this mighty water cat is reported in rivers and marshes and from Angola to Zambia, right? So, like, pretty large sort of area there, reported with different local names. The funniest one, I like one here, is Bingola. So maybe it likes bingo and stuff like that. So maybe we could get the Bingola to buy one of these sort of calendars here if we put on some grannies playing bingo on some. So he might be a buyer there like this. But Delali, the Moro, Nguli, just to name a few, as well, of over a dozen local names that I found parts, different names in parts of Africa, right? So, but absolutely, the creature apparently will lay in the water sort of and wait at the edge of drinking water holes or things like that. And then when the person comes by, or animal or whatever, he'll just leap out and sort of drag into the drink. So they seem to spend quite a bit of time in the water. They may not be fully aquatic, but they seem to be, compared to the other cats like Mungwa there, and the Mazari and all these different ones, Tigra Montana and all these different that are similar like sort of things. These ones are more sort of land sort of ones, right? Whilst with this particular one seems to be fully sort of more of a water like cat, right? And in fact, some of them call it like jungle walrus, right? So it's a bit weird, the sort of descriptions about it and things like that, but absolutely fascinating sort of a creature that definitely has some sort of merit to it and things like that. The water lion has been reported in many areas, from early explorers to even modern sightings suggest this king of water cats may still roam. In 1939, a botanist mentioned about a scary creature that inhabited Angola. Lord Walter in 1941 mentions about the beast. He wrote about an amphibious beast with tusks that's turned downward that inhabit the areas of Angola. Lake Bugala, Hans Schumberg, there mentions about how a few hippos in a lake due to killer creature in lake. A soldier was reported to be killed by one in the 1940s, witnessed by others, where the guy was by the water and the monster came out and sort of grabbed him and sort of dragged him into the depths. Modern accounts still occur in the region of the Cameroon, a large maned lion. There they describe it slightly different. They say it has a mane on it, lion-looking cat, roughly like the size of a large lion, with huge tusks and said to kill gorillas to drink by the water holes in the rivers and stuff. So this guy here, one of Trudeau's half-man ape warriors here, he says, methinks I should not drink by the water's edge there. So they're learning fast, these creatures are even being aware of the Ottawa River monster and stuff like that. But apparently he's transported some of them down to Africa as well to start spying on other countries and stuff like that for him. So the Jean-Ke's keeping an update on all these sorts of things. So, but I'm concerned about these poor half-man, half creatures here, ape monster men, sort of thing. I don't want them sort of being eaten by this sort of ferocious water lion there. So sort of stuff like that. So the poor sort of you know, these half-man ape poutine eating warriors there and gorillas may be in big trouble. Sort of stuff. So, but all kidding aside, though, it's a sad sort of thing there, and I mean, gorillas are rare enough as it is, right? So, as hopefully that they'll learn to stay away from that sort of area there. That's not a sort of a good one. But very interesting sort of cryptid. Here next, this cool cryptid has a long history and reliable witnesses indicating the mighty Ngoma Manini likely lives, right? And its early accounts from 60s from a minister in a dugout said was brownish gray and a bit over 30 feet long. Some accounts over 50. Reported mostly in Central Africa, along with some areas of Western Africa, especially areas of the Mataba River as their main haunts. Another account said the creature was 40-foot long, grayish-brown to darker, with shorter legs and a sawtooth ridge down its back. A missionary couple saw one on a road that was the length of their car, at least, but it had larger planks than on the depiction here, right? And also there's a strange photo that was reportedly shot by either Jeremy Wade or somebody in their crew or something, and I've not been able to verify exactly like what if this creature is reported in the same sort of area or not. But it looks sort of similar to what was actually photographed, right? So, and the minister people, this missionary couple, well, the guy was a missionary, I'm not sure if his wife was, but anyways, this couple there, when they had seen it, they said it had larger sort of planks, and in the photograph you see something like that, right? I cover it in a sort of another show there, but another interesting sort of side note to it. It's still being seen from time to time, sort of thing like that, but I mean, it's not sort of common, and it's hard to get stories from these locations because a lot of times they're not sort of, you know, they're only picked up by missionaries or different ones, and people that happen to be sort of in the region, they pick up a story here and there, right? So, but fascinating creature. I would say in the highest probability it's probably got something to it. I mean, the people that are usually their missionaries or reverends and the native people have been reporting it for hundreds of years and all this sort of stuff, and it's always the same, and this creature is seen sometimes crossing into other sort of marshes or body of water or whatever, that sort of thing. It's very feasible. The accounts are always sort of similar and things like that. What it could be, I don't know, but it's some of the accounts, it seems to have like a fork-like tongue on it and stuff like that, so possibly it's some kind of unusual monitor lizard of some sort. Hard to know. I mean, a lot of these African tales are very nondescript. Because maybe the natives, they didn't stay around long enough to observe it like some others would, right? Because they're more afraid of it, so they just hit the road, right? Sort of stuff like that, and you can't blame them, you know. So interesting, anyways. A cryptid that definitely has some I'd say a bit more validity to it. Uh, I interviewed some missionaries and say it's the exact these same kind of yeah, I mean description here pretty well, right? So interesting sort of creature, and definitely one of sort of the more higher possible credible sort of things to it where there may have some sort of actual reality to it, right? Here, this one here is really interesting, the Howix Falls monster. Reported by the Zulu people for centuries there, this giant snake is still seen, reported to be 30 to 50 feet plus and to eat individuals that fall in the falls. Also reported other areas of the upriver, up the Umagine, it's called the Umagine, I guess, or Umagine, however you pronounce it. And one girl was witnessed eaten by one in the 1940s. Some suspect that they could be giant migrant eels. So here we have another sort of account of these giant sort of eel things that are also seen around there. So it's amazing how many places worldwide, and amazingly that eels do this behavior worldwide of known ones, right? So why couldn't there be giant versions of you that we haven't found yet? And in fact, even maybe the smaller, medium-sized ones look so similar that even when they were caught, they might have been thought because they weren't really examined, they're just looking at face value of it in a net or something. Not everyone's dissected every little bit. It's very feasible that some in the past might have even shown up in collections, but people didn't know it, right? Because it's a smaller one and just a baby sort of version of it at the time, right? Sort of thing like that. So I've always suspected that sort of thing too. That, but in the book, cover all kinds of ones from North America and different places from around the world and things like that. But certainly. Here's an interesting photo, supposedly of it. Sort of thing like that. Yeah, a lot of these are suspect, right? But it's interesting. Anyways, certainly it looks fairly scary, kind of snake-like, sort of like that. But there's a lot of people have vanished around there. Like they'll go near it, sort of, and then yeah, what I mean. They just all of a sudden gone, right? So pretty creepy. Who knows? I mean, there could be some validity to it, or it could be true that they're actually giant eels of some sort, because apparently at certain times of year, this thing's never almost seen, right? I could have mentioned another one, the Groot slang, that is kind of similar to this. It's like a giant snake that guards diamonds in this cave in, I think it's South Africa there, and it looks similar, like it's a huge monster snake, and it guards all these diamonds and things like that. And apparently there's underground subterranean rivers down there that it lives in and things like that. So it also is a water-like creature, but another similar sort of account here where they're almost identical, sort of like in description, and in both places blamed of anybody ever going in there, they never return, right? So you're not going to get these diamonds there. So please, whatever you do, no Indiana Jones types. Go leaping for that one because it sounds like the success rate to get these diamonds is pretty slim, sort of thing, right? You probably have a better chance going to some of these mines that they have down there that are abandoned, where people will go there and they pay $5 for the day to dig around, sort of thing. And sometimes some of them get lucky and get monster rare ones and things like that, so they're still found, right? Because for machinery like sort of diamond digging or gold or anything, they have to make so much per tonnage of things, right? So once it gets below that, then they're not making the cash they need to for the cost of the sort of machinery and everything else. So they'll abandon these things, but that doesn't mean there isn't all kinds of them in there still. There's obviously like a lot of residual stuff laying around, right? So I'd suggest if you're going to go there, those kind of mines are usually not really right in the water or anything, and sort of away from a crocodile, likely. These kinds of stuff. So you might be better off if you want to search diamonds or buried treasure, all these kinds of stuff. Hit some other locations because this place has a tremendous amount of vanished people over the centuries. Right? Yeah, you can. No wonder the locals are a bit superstitious. But I mean, there actually has been real sightings. And I mean, I find it really hard to believe that a bunch of natives are going to tell local police that they saw this girl sort of sucked up by some monster, right, and stuff like that, and there isn't some kind of basis to it. So something grabbed her, right? And I mean, from their description, it sounds like the same sort of thing, right? So, pretty creepy. Anyways, now here's one that I'd love to hunt much more. I'd love to hunt giant eels here too, but the amount of disappearances and the size of this thing and everything else. It's not probably a good one to try and hook on a rod and reel there, so it might not be the best one to stay around. But this one here seems to be much more like fishish, catfishish, like, right, sort of thing. The mighty Lao. It's reported to English to catfish like as whiskers, other names like the Jack Jack, the Niall, along with several others. This animal seems to be either a giant catfish or a strange snake or eel with protuberances on its face, possibly. Some accounts make it over 100 feet long, with as small as 10 feet. Inhabits rivers and water holes waiting for victims. So this poor person here went for a bit of an evening swim, and this monster out there came out and sort of ended that sort of evening swim, sadly, right? So pretty creepy, but they sort of look catfishy, like a lot of the descriptions got whiskers on it and sort of long, snaky like, and sometimes they got ridges on it or weird things in the account that sort of gives you this possible catfishy like sort of a thing to it. One account from 1914 claimed they killed one and no identification was given by museum as to what it was, and they actually turned it over to museum. And you'll note this through history, even dragons, supposed stuffed unicorns and all kinds of stuff were all told to be removed around this Darwin's time when it first started. They found these upsetting and sort of would hurt their sort of theories, so they sort of removed these things. And it makes you wonder, right? Like, again, why wouldn't the museum know what this possibly is, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, a very interesting sort of a thing. Another earlier account mentions a captain had heard of one in the 1870s, and he said that it was 40 foot long. Witnessed in 19 that it was witnessed, right? So it was pretty huge. In 1947, a Dinka boy got attacked by one, right? So here again, the poor, as you can see here, the poor Dinkas swimming away, and sort of on that account, though, the person was lucky. The creature went to grab at him, and the guy that was with him sort of helped him and yanked him away sort of from the beast, right? So another theory is it could be a possibly unknown giant lungfish sort of thing like that. So I mean, there's a few possibilities and stuff like that. Some suggest other weird things, but I mean, from the descriptions, it sounds much more sort of fish-like. Sort of in a lot of this sort of things, so I doubt it's some of the other ones that they'll suggest. So I'll stick more with sort of this plausibility sort of thing here. Here we'll go through some big monster fish there, and one of them is actually called the Vundu, which is the largest known cat sort of in Africa. Reaches at least 5 feet and over 120 pounds. There are stories of once, twice plus that size. Notice the similarities between witnesses of the Lao and this species. So look at the same kind of like in the similar from before, what one of the descriptions of one being attacked by one, and this is very similar, right? Sort of like that. So here this poor lady was vanished in Zambia there. She was swimming along, and some kind of giant catfish-like thing came out and sort of grabbed her in the 1940s. But so, I mean, it's possible that there's a larger unknown relative of the voodoo, or that voodoo can reach much larger size than suspected, right? Sort of thing like that. Other names for it, like King Solomon's fish to the Surta, likes as many catfish do deep holes in rivers and has a decent distribution from Zambia to the Congo. Now, it's also reported to eat carcasses of villagers quite often, right? So makes this one creepy cat. So not good there, sort of thing like that. But so he's pretty creepy. Modern accounts still occur of strange sort of tales of people missing from time to time, and these sorts of things like this. So this creature is still being seen, whatever it may possibly be, right? Like I said, there's a lot of theories out there, but I tend to, from the descriptions and the stuff like that, and accounts that I collected, some haven't never been out in print, from these sort of regions, from different sort of missionary like people, the different weird ones. And this sort of, it sounds like it could be some giant relative of the voodoo, possibly like that. Also, other more terrifying here is there's like over 150 species of freshwater fish, from carp to giant Nile perch, that's known in Africa. There are going to be way more, but I mean, that's the count that I've seen most of the time that they'll quote. Sharks in some rivers, to freshwater rays, diverse types of fishing available from fresh to salt water. The killer Zambezi shark, basically like a bull shark, rains havoc on swimmers in local rivers and blamed for vanishings to deaths on natives. And some accounts have of some really huge ones. So, this poor foolish person here went for a night swim in the Zambezi and was seen no more, right? So, yeah, they come up and doo-doo. Right? So that's the end of sort of that, right? So, absolutely terrifying, sort of thing like that. I'd love to go fishing for them there, like in a larger sort of boat where you'd be a bit safer and sort of, like I said, have a bazooka just in case King Croc comes by or something else, right? But I'd like to see how big that they possibly, like, is there some really 14, 15 feet long that could also be responsible for a lot of these vanishings, right? And things like that sort of thing. But absolutely terrifying anyway. So, and there's a lot of other rivers that have shark-like reports, and some seem to be of other sorts, right? So it's not only sort of bull sharks and things like that, but definitely sort of an interesting sort of a beast, and there's some pretty decent sized freshwater rays and things like that in there as well, right? So just another sort of interesting ones that you could fish for, and I'm sure there's some undiscovered species. Like, it sounds a bit on the low end to be, even though it's Africa and a lot of drying and things like that. It sounds a bit on the low end that probably there's more out there than that, sort of, I would suspect. Here's one I've been dreaming of catching since I was a little kid. There are the perchish like sort of the bass looking, sort of looks like a giant largemouth almost, sort of a thing, these giant Nile perch. These monsters roam the Congo to the Nile, Lake Chad, Lake Tanganyika, which they were introduced into, along with some others, can reach at least 6 feet. But stories of 10-foot ones plus in old days, and even bigger a few, are and blamed of eating small children in a few rare reports and sort of things like that. So as you can see here, this monster is actually only about half the size of some of them reported. So look at the size of this goon, right? This is that's pretty monstrous, right? So can you imagine one with twice the size, and let's say he's got twice the size of mouth there, that he certainly could swallow a person, right? So, like, I mean, that's quite feasible. So, pretty terrifying, but I've always wanted to hook into one of these things. That's one of the few reasons, again, I would go to Africa, sort of like that. Sort of thing like that. It's interesting, anyways. I mean, some of these sort of fish are quite terrifying, right? Like that. But even, I'm not scared of these, really. Like, even if it was a giant one, 10 feet long, I would always have some kind of sort of big Bowie knife with me, and I mean, if this thing grabbed me, man, he'd be getting like big time, right? So, like, I mean, no matter what, I'm not as scared of that because there's sort of the raspy teeth here sort of on his jaw and stuff is not as devastating as the creature we're going to cover next year, which is absolutely terrifying. These monsters have teeth that make muskies look like punks. Right? This is a true story and really crazy. I was in this bass tournament many moons ago, way back, I think it was probably in the 80s sometime, and I'm out in this sort of bass tournament, and this crazy big muskie nailed into it, and we were actually catching just as many muskies as bass. So you'd catch these bass were responding to very large baits. So I'd get a bass, and then and I started working it out that the muskies were only staying in these bold holes, and the bass were staying on these inside sort of grass lines on the shallower side. And so once I figured this out, I started eliminating the muskie, stop hitting. But at first, a few bigger bass I also got in these holes and sort of these bald spots that were in there and sort of thing like that. But this one decent moose nailed into it, about 20 something on it, so, decent fish. And my hand slipped and he bit right down onto my arm and started trying to inhale it. And I was screeching in pain. And as you can imagine, these teeth sort of lock, so if you try and pull out, you're actually locking in, right? Sort of thing like that. So I had to pry this thing's mouth open. I saved it. It didn't die. And sort of swam away, was actually okay. Sort of thing like that. But the rest of the tournament, I had no Band-Aids or nothing. So being the hardcore nutcase that I am there and sort of stuff like this, I just kept casting and the blood's flying all over the place. And sort of so finally the air and stuff driving around started drying this out. But for the first while there was a wild. So I can't even imagine one of these terrifying killer Goliath tigerfish with these monster teeth. They're, sometimes several inches long here, sort of thing like this. Sometimes reported to be up to about 6 feet in older days and at least 120 pounds, and reports of much bigger ones and stuff like that, including a lot of deaths attributed to eating smaller to adult humans occasionally. So it indicates likely that this creature can get much larger, and probably the reason why the super monsters aren't as hooked. The bigger they get, the more bony their jaws are and the worse their teeth gets. And sort of what happens is that a lot of people, when they try and hook these, unless the sort of they get it in a certain locations where the mouth is softer down below, sort of like that, a lot of times they're going to sort of miss on the hit, right? So apparently some people have troubles where they've had to many fish before they finally landed one, right? Sort of thing like that. But here's a depiction of one there, and he's sort of grabbing the old guy's muskie size sort of bait here. And going to bite your sort of hands right off, right? Sort of thing like that. But absolutely terrifying sort of fish. I should have put in sort of a normal one in there, but anyways, give you a basic idea. They got big sort of giant sort of creepy looking scales that are the most monstrous sort of teeth on them, and they're related apparently to piranha and stuff like that, right? So sort of. That's what they state anyways, and it's all fascinating fish. I've always wanted to catch one, but they're scary as hell, and I certainly don't, again, like fishing in areas where giant killer snakes to crocodiles and prehistoric dinosaurs and other sorts of things are all floating around the same body of water. And that's I've been out there, so like I said, you definitely need some sort of lackeys here all around you, and paying them the big bucks, ones that are familiar with watching for crocodiles and know how to look for the signs and all that kind of stuff, right? Because and certainly have some everything from blowguns with me to you name it to blast these dudes if they start coming, right? So, but anyways, but I'd certainly love to sort of hunt one in a place less dangerous with less crocs, sort of likelihood, certainly would be one of my lists. I have some ideas of some baits that I've designed already for this, so if I could ever fish for this fish, I want to see if they'll work better than the kinds that people are throwing and possibly sell them to anglers. And in the future, I used to sell lures all the time to even different sort of stores and do things like that. I started tying flies and lures by the age of 4, right? So, and designing them. And every single lure that I've ever designed has gotten fish. Some at least like near several dozen on the first cast, and quite a few in the first like 10 casts, and then some might have taken like 50, 100 casts or different things, but that had more to do with sort of the time of day and the locations and the things like that. There wasn't much around, but when they started finally responding to it, they did well, right? So sort of stuff like that. On my film, I show you one that I designed after the now famous golfer here years ago. Heard this little brookie there, Henderson, when before she had won any major sort of things, she just won some sort of local stuff and things like that. And the look on this girl, she had the look of a sort of a dragoness, like the eye of the tiger in her, sort of. So I said, I bet you that girl's gonna, and a psychic buddy of mine claimed that she was gonna win all these 10 zillion sort of tournaments and things like this. And that's exactly what has occurred so far, and a sort of thing like that. And I mean, absolutely amazing, sort of a stupendous athlete there for the sort of golfing world. She's considered in the top like 7 sort of golfers on the planet, right? So like, I mean, yeah, you know, nobody talks about her because she's not a U.S. sort of thing, so they don't like promoting her as much and all that sort of thing. But in the Canadian market, she's well talked about in certain areas, especially this region. She comes from sort of a Lanark area and sort of things like that. And I actually know people that sort of know her as sort of a family and stuff like that grew up with them and things like that, and said that these Andersons are magnificent people and sort of like that. So certainly her father or whoever was teaching her all this sort of golfing there, and her sister as well is an awesome golfer that won all kinds of sort of contests, and her caddy, right, and sort of things like that. So but anyways, I designed this sort of, it's on the film there, the Brookie's ponytail, and I catch all kinds of tons of sort of fish with it, including a big carp off of it, and I got over 11 different species of fish with this Brookie's ponytail so far with it, and I haven't gotten to experiment with it in mass of all kinds of different little things, but I've gotten muskies, even a walleye, which is harder to do on flies most of the time, and things like that, and lots of smallmouth bass, a northern pike, carp, a sucker, crappies, and some other sorts of fish mixed in with it. In fact, even a catfish. That was right. Yeah, it was a catfish that, and I was surprised by that one. But even a catfish nailed it. I don't often catch catfish on flies. I have caught more channel catfish on flies, but not as many bullheads and stuff, unless it's really packed and they're massively aggressive. You can sort of get. But I mean, they sort of they. And the water has to be a little bit where they can actually sort of feel it and see the thing a little bit and sort of like that. And if you rub a little bit of scent on it, that works even better, sort of to entice it more, sort of thing. But in typical though, you know, channel catfish and some of the other ones, I'd imagine would work well. A larger sort of versions of it, because that's what I use for muskies, and I worked on that in northern pike and stuff. But a mega-sized version of it, I bet you would work on a lot of sort of species on different things like that, because it sort of shimmies up and down, sort of leech-like sort of thing like that, and it was based off of Brookie's ponytail, sort of thing. Right? So, but anyways, it's just another sort of entertaining sort of thing there. But this lure that I designed, it's sort of the hooks, spacings and stuff. I've looked and analyzed sort of the mouths of tiger, these killer Goliath tigerfish, and sort of seen where the softer parts are and things like that, and tried to sort of position the lure's hooks and the sort of and make it have a very wide sort of area to it up at the top, so when the creature comes to hit, it's not likely he's going to nail the whole thing. So this way you don't even need leaders. You should be able to stay away from its sort of teeth and be able to sort of land it right. So I'd love to experiment with it or send it out possibly to some hunter of tigerfish and stuff like that, just to see what would occur, right? Sort of thing like that. But certainly, this lure, I've used it already for other sorts of species of fish, but I specifically had designed it for that. And it works on other bigger sort of predators and things like that. It's a giant sort of spinnerbait, but the thing is that I suspect that it probably would work well on this sort of a fish. So because they're extremely sort of aggressive, sort of thing like that, and they like sort of big prey and that sort of thing. Like, I mean, they're attacking children and even full-grown adults occasionally. Obviously, a bigger bait isn't going to scare them that much, right? Sort of thing like that. So, but absolutely terrifying fish. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but there's really good carp fishing in sort of in Africa, right? And sort of stuff like that. And the last time I didn't show you as well as sort of the different sort of typical kinds that you'll run across in most countries and stuff like that. Here on the left, this supermodel that's trying to. He hasn't got a haircut in a bit, so he's getting more like the Lochness monster there. He's sort of getting a bit more furry. But here he's with the 39 plus inch, pretty moose specimen there. Sort of thing like this. And that's a typical common Canadian sort of carp that you'll run across most of the time. But in some waters and things like that, you get these variances. And they're all really sort of the same sort of carp, except these ones are these grass carp are slightly different. But I mean, these basic three here, like mirror and sort of leather carp. The mirror carp, as you can see, it has like way bigger sort of scales on it, and quite often it'll have like patches missing and things like that. It goes in variants. And leather carp, but they'll almost have zero scales or no scales, or just a handful of sort of like a little bit of stuff laying around, but mostly sort of like a leather sort of thing to it, right? So. But here's the different ones, and here this happy angler there is sort of with this nice sort of grass carp. I only got to fish for them a few times in the States, or I got some pretty decent big ones in Illinois and a few sort of areas in around through Illinois and stuff like that, and a couple other times I was able to fish for them and stuff like that. So I actually caught a few for what you would call like trophy size for our sorts of country and stuff like that, but they can reach a pretty sort of a decent size to them, some over like 100 pounds and stuff like that, so a pretty decent size there. Like common carp in Africa there can at least grow like 50 pounds and probably much larger. And grass carp, I'm not sure how big that they get there. I've seen some photographs of some that look probably around the 40, 50 pound mark sort of idea in that sort of range, but I'm not sure exactly how large that these sort of can get in there. But in other sorts of places, even in France, there's been some over 100 pounds, so I probably sort of, similar, like same with the carp in most regions. A 50-pound carp is a real titan sort of mosaic. So it's the same sort of thing, like around these carp, there's exceptions where some get like super titanic, even bigger in certain bodies of waters and things like that in different countries, but it's more to do with sort of the water and how much feed is in it and a lot of different other things, the size of it and stuff like that, as much as the country, because even in cold sort of waters and sort of Russia and stuff like that, you'll get reports of some over 50 kilos, right? Like monsters, right? That are super old and sort of giant monsters, sort of stuff like that. So, I mean, and even in sort of North American waters, there's thought to at least possibly get this sort of big and sort of like that, right? So, I mean, these things are sort of feasible in there. Now, these guys are a real terror. They are already gotten in sort of some major river systems, and they're sort of hitting. There was one found caught in the Welland Canal, and I mean, not much further in sort of Bango. Now you're in the Great Lakes, right? And these sort of silver Asian carp. And amazingly, these guys are allowed to transport these through the aquarium trade and all kinds of different stuff. And I saw these things back in the 70s in this Asian restaurant in Ottawa. So thank God the guy didn't likely throw them into our local Rideau Canal there or stuff, or we might already, mind you, that would cut down on these, I don't know, maybe I might like it. It would certainly cut down on the annoying 10 million people going by in kayaks every second and disturbing all this sort of water up, and they're roiling it to sort of pieces here and loading it full of weeds dead from top to bottom on the weekends especially. But when I done these sort of documentary here, sort of thing like that, so that might cut down on them, because these guys will leap right out of the water sort of and smash into your heads. There's been deaths attributed to them already. Not that they actually like tried to eat or kill you, they just leap out of the water and sort of, and they breathe like insane. I mean, there was a tournament in Texas, and they didn't even realize there was that many in the lake, and they started pulling out every day like massive tons of these in this tournament, just netting them. And I mean, they couldn't get rid of these things. They still kept coming in with sort of like massive tons each day, sort of many contestants, right? And the locals were surprised by this and hadn't even noticed them. So can you imagine, like, sort of like, so that's the problem. Once these dudes get into the Great Lakes and stuff like that, they're going to start causing havoc everywhere. And there's other ones that even sort of are similar, that even get bigger and sort of ones like that length. But at least these ones can get like about near 6 feet and probably about 150 pounds or so on them, right? So. Yeah, so here's a nice one the fellow caught there. A beautiful place to fish. Looks pretty exciting. So Africa's definitely the sort of place to go there to catch some monsters. And also there's a lot of like dams there that they have and all kinds of stuff. And they've introduced like largemouth bass. Some of them get fairly trophy size as well and things like that. So there's some definitely fishing opportunities they're in these sort of rivers down there if you're interested in that sort of thing like that. But here, besides sort of some killer fish and stuff like that, and there's also, like I said, the giant eel-like sort of stuff that goes on from time to time in some of these rivers, and sort of sounds like a monster lungfish eel sort of thing, like not only the accounts that I just said before, but like many numerous similar ones in sort of different regions throughout Africa, right, and sort of stuff like that. So there's definitely some pretty creepy huge fish floating around in African waters as well. So, but besides that, let's go on next here to the most famous of the sort of cryptids of Africa, probably is the Mokele Mbembe. Let's look at here this possible living relative of a sauropod dinosaur. Reported in the Congo and Lake Tele, this monster herbivore has a lot of credible sightings in some films. Descriptions range brownish gray to darker, 10 to 30 feet long, sometimes a bit longer. Typically smoother skin, small head, and a long sort of neck. Again, I don't know why this thing always does this, but sort of thing like that. So very interesting how this occurs. But here, we're just going to fix this just for fun out of entertainment. Here. So I thought this one was clear, but no. So there you have it. So I had no idea how that sort of occurs, but it certainly does quite frequently. So, but anyway, I thought I'd give you some entertainment there. Might as well fix it now. Sort of thing like that. But very interesting sort of this cryptid here. As some accounts says it's got scales on it, unicorn horn on it. Sometimes it's not sort of like a big clawed feet. it sort of has flippers on it and things like that. So the descriptions can vary depending on the region, and they may not actually be the same creature. But reports do not much resurface until the early 1900s. In 1913, Ludwig Fryer mentioned them being seen by trappers of the region of the Lower Ubangi and Sangha system, said to be the size of an elephant and gray colored to brownish, and long neck, smaller head, smoother skin. They showed him plants it eats, and it's the same as mentioned in the Bible, the liana tree. Now, that's what I find incredibly convincing to me, besides even photographs like this of finding footprints and things. Like this earliest account besides the Bible is in the 1770s. This missionary mentions about finding giant tracks that were 3 feet wide and 8 feet, like sort of space between them to the next ones, with 3 giant-toed claws. And here you get the same sort of modern accounts here with photographs of them and stuff like that, right? But what I find the most amazing is that in the Bible, the translation of the tree that he eats is of the liana tree. So how is it that these different natives, these pygmy guys in the Lucala region and these different places all tell you that this sort of creature eats of this liana tree, but it's also conveniently in the Bible, this behemoth? I mean, come on. I mean, that's a bit sort of, you know what I mean? Very interesting, right? Like, you got to sort of admit the coincidence of that. I find extraordinarily hard to believe that that's coincidence. The sightings are still going on in numerous expeditions. Some accounts give it, like I said, a unicorn, sort of a horn on it, or a tail like a crocodile in some accounts. It's known to attack boats and canoes and will kill the occupants but not eat them. Here, a young lady collecting water in the 1950s on the Upper Congo saw this beast reaching its neck up, eating fruit from a tree. It's said to be able to stop the current in rivers, in some sort of accounts in smaller areas that it was seen. One early explorer had taken in-depth notes about the beast through the Cameroons. He said that it does not come out until sunset typically, and he had lost his accounts, and he had lost some of the sort of stuff of it. So, but basically, that's what he could remember, sort of that the sort of creature was like that, and basically the same sort of size and sort of description, sort of as some of the other ones. Mr. Alexander had said that natives described the creature's footprints the size of large paddles that also would come out mostly at night. And same thing, it was said to attack people but not kill them. In his sort of area, they sort of would trample them over occasionally. Some people ran over it, but I mean, in typical, it didn't actually reach out of the water and sort of grab them out of the canoe, but it would sort of be aggressive towards you, sort of thing, right? And the native Zaman tribe feared it, right? So, like, but I just find that amazing that, I mean, here, this lady here in the 1950s, and all these different ones. This was a story I collected from some people that were over in Africa that met this woman that sort of saw this in the 1950s. But here, like, I mean, here's sort of what the thing looked like, and I mean, it fascinates me that here you got the Bible telling you this, and I mean, the Bible is extremely accurate, whether people believe in the God aspect of it or not. We're talking about when they say Bethlehem, this, that, like all these different stuff, the sort of cave of John the Baptist, they found that now. It even has his symbols on it and everything, exactly where he described where Jesus has put his feet and this sort of thing. So whether you want to believe Jesus was a regular human being or not, or any of these stuff, we're not talking about, we're just talking about simply the Bible as an historic document is 100% accurate when it makes descriptions of things like this, because not a single word of it has ever been proved to be false, and many things are corroborated now, proving the things that they said. These different sort of tales, they actually find these things in these places, and they're exactly as they said, right? So I mean, you have to sort of wonder that in the Bible, sort of, you hear this behemoth described, the great sort of gig, and apparently this could be like the behemoth, where they might have shrunken over the sort of mass of the thousands of years, right? But originally the creature was even bigger in sort of some of the accounts, and you find this in ancient times from dragons, all the rest of them. So it could be that it's shrank a little bit, but the thing is that it's exactly the same kinds of descriptions across the board, except in some accounts you get it sort of like more flipper-like, and sort of, and sometimes has a horn on its head. So my suggestion to this is actually that's not the same creature. It's a similar one that's like a water plesiosaur, like one that happens to have a horn on its head, that also may eat herbivore, like sort of stuff like that, because they say similar, it reaches its neck up and does the same sort of thing. But it's aggressive towards sort of hippos and elephants and these kinds of stuff, right? So same kind of idea here across the board, except most of the accounts are like this, the brontosaurus one, and like described in the Bible and the different stuff. But there is that variance that they throw in with this, that I suspect actually could be a separate sort of, unknown sort of dinosaurian-like creature and sort of stuff like that. Here, besides historical accounts, plenty of modern ones in films and photos gives this cryptid quite a bit of credibility. One of my heroes of cryptozoology, who I conversed with a few times when very young, was Ivan Sanderson, and who in 1932 saw the creature himself. He saw it in the Mainu River, and it roared at him and another fellow in a dugout canoe in front of a cave, and scared the living heck of them, so they hit their own sort of thing, right? So, I mean, this guy was an extremely good observer and sort of all that kind of stuff, and a much more scientific sort of a person. So, I mean, a person like this is too highly credible to me, as sort of, and this guy, all the sorts of stuff he wrote about in his books and things like that, these things are still continued seen. They weren't made up or any of this kinds of stuff. So I just find him a sort of a very high sort of a credible sort of a witness sort of thing. And so same with the Congo Mato. I fully believe these two creatures, even if I never seen any of these other stuff, simply because Ivan T. Sanderson saw these sort of things, and so this guy was sort of one of my early sort of heroes of cryptozoology sort of thing like this, and absolutely loved his stuff and sort of thing like that. And so I just fully sort of, because he was much more of a scientific sort of a guy and that sort of thing like that, I certainly am going to take this account fully 100% in my mind. This guy isn't going to exaggerate or mistake a crocodile or a moose or any other ridiculous creature that could be floating around for sort of this. He must have, saw something here that was quite extraordinary, right? That sort of things like that. But here over the years, numerous caves, dugouts have been found along Lake Telly and the Congo, matching descriptions from hundreds of years ago. So, and that's what they were said to do by many of the earlier explorers, that they would dig out caves along the river and sort of come out at night from them, and they hole up in these in the day. And nobody in their right mind's going to start trying to dig around in there looking for these things, right? So they're left alone, and the natives sort of fear them, sort of, so they don't bother with them much and things like that. But I mean, absolutely fascinating. Here, besides historical accounts, expeditions from Japan, both in 78 and 92, claim sightings. There's another mix up there, but I do not have a photo of it. But one that was on that's incredible in the 1970s. Herman Reguster had taken a film of it with some snapshots and matches descriptions of photos from others, and they all match similar, like they're all about the same sort of thing like that. But I wish I was able to find that one, but it's hard to find that show, that particular one. But I remember seeing it in the 70s there, and sort of he had these sort of pictures flashed out of the sort of beast, right, in the Lake sort of Telly there, right? So Absolutely fascinating. I hear a Japanese film crew that had flew over by a helicopter in 1992. I took that. You can see the big heads sort of coming out like that, and it's swimming different than a crocodile would. So I find that interesting and sort of, and it looks pretty huge. I mean, that's pretty big. Like, I mean, if you're looking at it from a helicopter, you have to remember that it's from a helicopter and they're way up in the air, and yet you can see compared to the trees here and the stuff like that, that thing looks like it's covering a pretty large area there. There's no way that was some little fish or a small alligator going by. Whatever it was quite large. From you can tell from being a helicopter like that and looking down and comparing like the creatures in the same kind of zone as these trees, except they're up a little bit above it. But I mean, still comparing it to the size of these trees and the sort of things and the thing gives you a pretty good idea that the likely, typical sort of crocodile-like sort of thing wouldn't be sort of the answer here. Plus, like I said, the head's different, sort of the way that's swimming up. But here, this one photo showed up around mid 2000 on the net there. I've still never been able to verify exactly who took this. Rumors was it was taken by tourists, but absolutely the same thing here. Like you can see, sort of like, and its head is exactly as that lady with the previous drawing and that sort of thing like that, eating at the liana tree. You can see the big long neck sort of on it, like that. One was killed by a pygmy tribe, and they got sick or worse eating it. Some of them. From eating this sort of thing, recorded by Roy McCall, researcher who went to Lake Telly, and locals always drew the creature the same. So they would draw it in the sand, and all of them sort of match like a sort of sauropod dinosaur, right? Sort of thing like that. So absolutely fascinating sort of thing, and it's a very difficult area to get into and things like that. Now, here this film convinces me so much, even though it's extremely short. I want you to sort of go to look up on YouTube, sort of like that, and look for Mokele Mbembe, and you'll be able to see this extremely short clip that's only about 45 seconds long. And they're talking to these guys. I guarantee you these are not actors. They're not, these people are so bloody petrified that this is not some other thing. This really, whatever it is that they filmed, and it looks extremely large, and it matches sort of this back-like description. It doesn't look like a crocodile, sort of in the water, and it doesn't look like a snake. It looks more like sort of what they're saying, sort of like in that sort of range of what you'd imagine it might look like, right? And apparently, sort of like it's but this thing comes up. And when they're talking, and all of a sudden they realize what it is, and they start screaming "Mokele Mbembe" like this, and they start bolting for the hills. I mean, they're absolutely terrified. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, for an update a little bit there. In a previous show, I mentioned about South America. When I had seen it, it was in the light, and I wasn't able to see sort of their whole skin tone that well. I just thought they were tattoos and stuff like that. But I kind of can suspect now that, yes, these people were South American of some sort, a sort of thing like that. So probably it was filmed in South America someplace, right? Like sort of like you can by the sort of their voice and sort of the tan and that they have and that sort of thing like that, it sort of matches that sort of thing. So it probably was sort of two anglers or whatever, boaters of some sort that was from that sort of area. So and now I've been able to sort of at least more conclusively say that it wasn't likely filmed in another location. It is probably true that it was filmed somewhere sort of in that sort of area, but considering that the range of this creature is actually over 1 million square miles of untouched sort of forest and marshy wilderness, rivers and lakes in there, where it's reported, it's got different names all through sort of different parts of Africa, but it seems to be the same sort of monster here. most of the time. And it doesn't match like elephants or hippos, and it seems very large, sort of a thing like that, right? So, whatever it was on this film here, these guys believe that it's that, and they're petrified. Here, Marcel Aganan, who saw the creature, also came back with similar accounts, right? And the same thing, and sort of that here's another one of the caves said to be dug out by the creature. I mean, that looks to me way too big to be dug out by some kind of even normal sort of things like crocodilian like stuff, or different ones that might sort of do weird things like that, or these sort of things. Look at the size of that. I mean, that's pretty huge. I don't know about that. Like, I mean, that too looks pretty sort of big, right? So, but nevertheless, besides Roy McCall and all different sorts of other ones out there that have done these expeditions, apparently you can make it there. It would cost you at least bare minimum like about 20-30 grand here if just one person just even make it around this region and hang out for a couple of days, right? So it was certainly going to cost you some cash, but definitely. But I mean, if you had like 10 or 20 with you, then it would cut down the cost a little bit, sort of thing like that. But definitely, if you're into that sort of thing, that'd be the place, an expedition to go, sort of thing like that. I am in some ways, but I'm also, mosquitoes 2 inches long and sort of that can suck the blood out of you in a second and killer this and that, and people vanish by the second. I don't know. I think I'll leave the mighty Bible monster behemoth sort of to sit there still, and sort of pick a less scary area of Africa. Like Lake Tanganyika is a lot sort of safer in the general sense. I could hunt a Nile perch there or something like that. Even though there's scary cows from that area too, it's still less scary as sort of this area. That's right, because this is really remote, man. Like, I mean, super, super remote, right? Like, where you gotta hack your way through with deadly machetes and everything else, right? To sort of get into there. So, but a lot of different explorers and different sort of people have all went there, from missionaries, all kinds of stuff, and everybody tells you the same sort of thing, and older accounts from early sort of people that explored the sort of region. So all in all, sort of I'd say it has extremely high credibility. Lots of footprints have been found. They always match. So that would indicate then that there's people running around in the forests of deadly killer snakes and everything else on the planet, crocodiles and all kinds of stuff, and killer fish. And they have nothing better to do with their time than to carry big, giant, monster heavy objects, somehow hammer them all into the ground as they go along, to get white tourists to pop up in their village and buy them a free poutine. Doesn't sound too sort of likely, right? So even though scientists sort of remember, it's over 1 million square miles of sort of territory here. You know what I mean? In the most inhospitable stuff that very few scientists have ever seen, anyways, right? And stories of killer man-eating crocodiles to giant fish monsters and everything else. I mean, sort of like this place certainly could be an area where such a thing could still exist, right? So, so to me, it's certainly definitely a very valid sort of a cryptid, and sort of definitely sort of there's something to it. This one here, the Nasaga, sort of an odd, smooth crocodile-like creature with wrinkled skin that lives in swamps and rivers along Benguela, said to be scaleless and thought to kill if you cross its domain. Size is not given much and seems to be roughly the size of a large crocodile. Seems to be of gray to darkish color with sort of wrinkles like on it. Said to kill hippos in the swamps and some humans. Few modern reports still exist, and although no photo of them or films can be found, it still seems to have some credibility to it, right? So here this poor lady described going for a dip in a marsh. The saga was that's said to rarely leave the sort of waters and sadly was waiting for her, right? So there you have it, right? So not a good idea to be sort of hanging around there, but he has sort of, a lot of crocodilian like features, except his mouth seems to be more squarish, roundish, and smooth skin with wrinkles, almost like a sort of walrus, like sort of would have, or something like that, right? So, I mean, it's possible it may not even be sort of like a crocodile. It could be some lizard, monitor lizard of some weird sort, or some kind of weird thing like that, right? It's hard to know, but I mean, just another sort of interesting, bizarre sort of cryptid out there that certainly gives you the creeps, sort of stuff like that. But very another interesting one, sort of like this. Now, I covered this one already in another show, the Bahali there, and it's said to be like croc-like beasts who wait for victims' water's edge. I cover a bit more about it in another show, but I just wanted to mention it here too because it's what's credible about it is even parts of it have been found, and numerous people that live around there, hunters and stuff, say that they've killed one in the past and things like that. And they're said to be about 10 to 30 feet long with a more rounded face than crocs, and hump like bumps on its head in some accounts, like with these spine like ridges coming out of it and sort of stuff like that. So it could be a male female like sort of a thing going on there. Reported mostly in rivers and swamps of Liberia. Deaths and vanishings are attributed to it. Some modern investigations show creatures still seen and resembles the dinosaur Postotosuchus. And very interesting, sort of, and interestingly, this dinosaur also was around the same size, exactly as they described. So that's another interesting thing. And like I said, there's all kinds of examples of living dinosaurs, right? So even though they haven't found the fossil record of a newer one, that doesn't mean that they don't exist, right? And these natives don't seem to make it superstitious that much, and they even hunt it occasionally, and some parts have been supposedly found in markets and stuff like that. So certainly a well worthwhile cryptid. Dars are going to be a little bit perturbed. There is some of the a couple of drawings were asked for a bunch to get them all sort of quickly done, and sadly wasn't able to sort of have a few of them finished fully. And so now I'm going to have to put up sort of half ones here where they weren't fully, but they're clear enough that they'll certainly give you an idea what the creature looks like here. The M. Emila Natuka, right? Now, this African cryptid is said to kill elephants, live in swamps, has a huge horn it kills enemies with, said to be mostly in the Cameroon and the Congo water marsh systems, said to have a crocodile-like tail and ridges on it, roughly the size of an elephant to smaller. One early account says slightly larger than a hippo. The native spirit and say its feet resembles that of a rhino. Similar animals reported in Lake Telly. Numerous researchers have collected accounts such as Roy McCall and stuff like that. In one account in 1981, 3 dead elephants were found by a drinking hole, said to have been killed by one of them in a place called Boa. What was interesting about the account is it couldn't have been poachers. The ivories was still there, so it certainly wasn't humans. Nobody, even if the guy wasn't a poacher, if he came across them, he knows that this ivory is worth a fortune to sort of these traders, right? So, I mean, this is mucho dinero sort of for him, right? So, yeah, sort of thing. So, pretty sort of scary sort of thing. But it seems like the creature sort of doesn't actually like eat elephants and stuff like that. It just is very territorial and sort of will sort of attack them, right? Like hippos or sort of things like that, right? So that's sort of ones, So very interesting. Another sort of one there that has accounts. Early explorers mentioned it, German explorers. From 1800s and things like that, and that sort of thing like that is always described about the same, with this sort of ridge on it and this big one unicorn horn like sort of thing through it. So pretty fascinating, sort of another interesting here giant killer snakes. Does a relative of Gigantophis to possibly Titanoboa, even though they're not known in that sort of area. Still, it could be some kind of one that's some relative to them, sort of thing. In 1959, a Belgium helicopter pilot photographed a giant snake that tried to attack his helicopter, with the helicopter pilot estimated at least 50 feet long. Some recent fossils from Morocco interestingly matched the size reported by the pilot. Modern reports from Senegal to Rwanda of some over 100 feet long still persist. So they found like this gigantifus sort of ones there that possibly would be in the same sort of range of size. So here this photo from 59 shows the huge size of the beast, and it had like about a 3 foot thick head on it that was kind of diamond-like shape. And the photo was tested by different ones, and it tested authentic, so it wasn't some kind of tampered thing. And you can see trees down there, and I mean, this is from a helicopter way above, so no way that's some little thing, snake on the ground and stuff like that. It's probably very true what they're saying from sort of the description, the height, the helicopter's up, just like I showed you in the other one. You can see the creature's quite large compared to sort of the thing, right? And I mean, that's really convincing, extraordinarily so. So, I mean, this gigantifus or some kind of Titanoboa-like thing or something similar, some other unknown snake. Some suspect it could be an unknown species of rock snake that's like Titanic size, sort of thing that's in that sort of region and that sort of like but, I mean, these rumors still exist there of sort of these giant sort of killer sort of snakes from sort of that region, right? So, just another one out there, just like in Asia and sort of different countries, we got these giant snakes, and I cover a lot of giant snakes in our North American continent that are reaching almost some of that sort of size in early days, right? Sort of stuff like that I cover in the book, so very interesting. I like this monster for comedy wise, but he sure scares the crap out of me. They're the Mamblumba in the Mizunlaba River. This bizarre cryptid sucks on your face and eats your brains. Said to be a deity, so they worship it almost, the locals around there. The creature is 30 to 50 feet long, body of a fish, head of a horse, and neck like a snake, and short legs or fin or flippers sort of idea. A rash of deaths was attributed to it in the later 90s. Police found 9 people killed in the river with face and head drained of blood and all kinds of being eaten away by possibly, they found crabs on some of them, but the locals insisted that it wasn't the crabs that had sort of sucked all the sort of blood out and the different stuff, that was just after effect from the monsters sort of grabbing him here. Jean Guisa's a story got from one of his informants. In the 90s, True Glow clone was smoking a huge cracker on the river, and the creature came up and got wasted from the fumes and sucked the clone's reaper away. So here you can see a depiction of it, and there was the other one that was Dar was supposed to finish, but wasn't fully darkened up yet. so anyways, we had to whip them in as they are, but we'll show you an update there. But anyways, here was this True Glow clone here, and you can see it here. So kind of looks like True Glow there. So, or maybe it was True Glow there, because I mean he was leaping around all different kinds of countries trying to make secret deals with them and stuff like that. So who knows? So, but apparently what happened is that this before that, even though this creature was reported for ages, this real attacks and piles of attack, much more than regular sort of thing, happened when this sort of True Glow clone here was smoking this big reaper. The smoke sort of went around the creature, sort of got him all sort of woozy and crazy, maybe got the munchies. So maybe the creature was sort of like leaping around, sort of thinking that others that it's seeing on the shore might also have a reaper, so it started sucking on their face, looking for any residual effects of this major cannabis indicus that he might have been smoking, right? so there you have it there. So junkies, keep an eye on these True Glow clothes. Are everywhere, and these aliens are popping them up all across some countries across the world, right? So besides the Lochness monster, these true glow clowns are certainly out there. So anyway, so all getting aside there, gave you a basic idea of some of the African sort of cryptids. I didn't want to go into a huge amount of these sort of, because really a lot of these stories are very sparse and certain stuff, and I cover a few in the books that were sent to me from different sort of witnesses when I used to run a cryptozoological site, and also like talking to sort of religious missionaries and all these kinds of ones like that. So I got some other sort of stories and stuff that I don't include in here, and these kinds of things. But all kidding aside here, sort of thing like that is certainly a scary sort of cryptid. So well, whatever it was, you know, sort of very strange, right? So fish like to sort of like you know. So who knows? It might have been some, might be not even really lives in the river, but could be visits from some kind of marsh nearby somewhere that from time to time maybe an animal of this sort of more deeper thickets and you don't see it too time, and or that possibly that it does attack and kill people, but that it doesn't really suck your blood out of your face, that you know the locals find these crabs eating on them. They sort of get this idea maybe from the finding dead bodies in the past where their face is eaten up a bit. So it's hard to know, like sort of, because the accounts are pretty weird and sort of always sort of, the people are in a panic, so they're not standing around sort of giving great description of it. So there you have it. So, but anyways, that gives you a little bit of sort of a course here on the basic sort of ideas of the African cryptids. There's way more I could have covered, like I said, of all kinds of ones that you could conclude as sort of water-like sort of monsters to a certain degree, where they have that sort of, they certainly are around water quite frequently and sort of thing like that. But there's so many of these that, you know what I mean, and they're similar, where the same creature, the chipquee and these different ones all across these different areas, all seems to be quite often the same sort of monster, but just slightly described different or slightly variants of it, and it could be like a subspecies of it or whatever, right? Like they might have a larger range than knowing these things, and they're big and creepy, and they live in the most deepest sort of jungle-like stuff and rarely come out. So when they are seen in these places, they may have a much, like I said, it's over 1 million square miles there of this sort of stuff. It's possible that these things live in other sort of areas and just visit at certain times a year and do weird sorts of stuff, right? So that's why you'll get sightings for a while and nothing and sort of stuff like this, because this river isn't massive from the pictures I've seen of it. I don't know its full length or all the fishes, species that are in there or anything like that, but it doesn't look to be massively huge. So certainly probably like of some big thing like that was this sort of long, 30, 50 feet, being seen all the time, sort of you'd think that by now a photograph might have shown up or something, right? So, but who knows? But anyways, so if you see one of these True Glow clones there, they got the stash on them. So if you're looking for 2-foot reapers and stuff like that, or if you want to sort of, this might work. Like, what if some of these clones are along the Ottawa River? This Ottawa River beast might start mutating too, and sadly start grabbing anglers and sort of sucking their face off. So that's not good. So we don't want this creature moving over like Nessie does apparently to all kinds of lakes worldwide. I still find that hilarious that actually people believe that the Lochness monster is a single monster, and that the Lochness monster moves from lake to lake, and it's always the Lochness monster. The most silliest ideology I've ever heard of. So, but all kidding aside, though, seriously, it's certainly the Lochness monster or any of these other creatures is not one. It's a group of animals. They're in small numbers, obviously, and they mate like any other creatures and sort of stuff like that. And they have large ranges, and some of them probably do visit in and out of lakes through underground river systems and all kinds of things like that. So if you see one of these True Glow clones here, tell them not to stand by the water there. They might be in a bit of trouble. But all kidding aside, so if you see any sort of good sightings there, or monster fish stories, or any of that sort of stuff, definitely contact me there, and we'll hook you up, as well as also if you want to get in that calendar. Sean's working on many variants of it. So we'll give you an update on his calendar there in the future, and sort of thing. But anyways, this is just another one. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do next. Which one will I decide, but I just wanted to give you some idea and how to some of the giant fish worldwide, and some of the other sorts of things, just to sort of keep it interesting, and sort of different ones, and cover some that not too many people cover, and that sort of thing like that. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time there with a new show, and bye for now.